26 years ago, I learnt 2,000 kanji. I thought I'd done something impressive. I'd passed the JLPT N2 exam and I'd built this life around Japanese. But the truth is, I couldn't actually read. Not a newspaper, not a magazine, not a book written for Japanese people. I could pass the test, but if you put a page of Japanese in front of me, it felt like code. And I have never said that out loud. It made me feel dumb. And that's the part that nobody talks about. Recently, Japanese came back into my life out of the blue. It felt fun. I've always loved speaking it. And creating videos in Japanese in particular felt like remembering the language, remembering my time in Japan. Then I decided to test myself. I took an old MEXT exam paper and I expected it to be difficult, but not impossible. But it ended up feeling that way. The intermediate and advanced sections were such a chore. In some places, I couldn't read them at all. And just like before, I remembered that uncomfortable truth. I spent a decade learning Japanese, but I could never actually read. And 26 years later, I was exactly back in that same place. And I felt annoyed because it made me realize something. A lot of what I learned didn't actually stick. And it made me question something I hadn't really faced before. Did I ever actually learn Japanese in a way that could last? Because on paper, I did everything right. I studied for years, I lived in Japan, I used Japanese every day. But there was always one thing that never felt right: reading. Reading is fundamental. If you learn a language like Italian or French, you expect to be able to read something: a menu, a sign, a magazine, a newspaper. But with Japanese, that never really happened for me. I could pass exams, I could have conversations, but I could not sit down and read a newspaper. Not properly, not even skim reading. It didn't feel difficult. It felt beyond my ability, like looking at something that wasn't meant for me. I have to be honest, this memory was more than buried. It was a part of my Japanese learning journey that I didn't want to acknowledge. But all is not lost. I know that the 2,000 Chinese characters, or kanji, I learnt are still there. They're just distant. And if you have ever thought, I used to know this, where did it go? You might recognize this. This is the first stage of remembering a language, and it's the hardest one. You know you used to be able to do this. You remember speaking, you remember understanding, you remember writing, and you remember learning a ton of vocabulary. But when you try now, nothing comes out. And that gap between where you are now and where you were then, that's where it hurts. But then comes this strange in-between. You hear the language, it feels familiar, you know it's there. You understand more than you can say, but when you try to speak, it disappears. And that almost feeling is incredibly frustrating. It's the same for kanji. I look at those characters, they stare back at me. I've met them before. Taking the Japanese MEXT exam recently was an experiment to see how much Japanese I had retained. But since the shock of realizing that I have forgotten how to read, I've been sitting with it. Then something came across my path, an opportunity for a full circle moment, a completion of that open loop, that loop of studying, remembering, and knowing kanji. I had let that be still and something actually showed up. A video appeared in my YouTube feed from an American guy who studied really hard for 2 years and achieved the JLPT N2 exam. And you should hear how he speaks. He didn't just pass the test, he lives it. He knows the language really well. His Japanese is just like a native speaker's. But what he said actually stopped me in my tracks. He learnt 2,000 kanji for the test, but he said he remembers them. He knows them inside out. And he showed how. I love full circle moments. The ones in your life that you can't plan for, but just unexpectedly get completed. And for me, that was my daughter starting to learn Japanese at high school. My 20s were all about studying Japanese. I studied it, I lived in Japan, and I worked there. Then I came back to New Zealand and the language disappeared from my life overnight. No conversations, no daily use, just English. And I thought that part of my life was finished. So when Japanese started coming back, I did what I used to do. I started studying again. I worked really hard to craft sentences, to create some YouTube videos in Japanese language. And it was super hard. Like, there are quite a few words that feel like actual tongue twisters to me. In some ways it was fun, but behind the scenes, the reality was that I was doing 20 takes to say like one sentence sometimes. There were certain words that would just not form inside my mouth, like tsunagareru, or kizuku. And something felt wrong because I wasn't starting from zero. I was comparing myself to how I used to speak Japanese back in the day. And that creates pressure and frustration. And this quiet thought that maybe that part of me is gone. But you were so encouraging. You sent me kind and thoughtful messages. I kept going, and saying the words on my videos felt easier. I have to be honest, some still feel like tongue twisters, and I think there will always be some like that. But on the back of this, my reading and speaking does feel better. But taking that MEXT test brought up a feeling of shame. There was something deeper about my decade-long learning journey that I had never properly dealt with. Reading. Because reading is basic. If I was learning French or Italian, I'd expect to be able to read something. A sign, a menu, a page, something. But with Japanese, I couldn't. Not really. And that stayed with me. I didn't just feel like something had gone. I felt like I'd missed something fundamental. I had spent years of my life studying this language, a decade. I could speak, I had Japanese friends, I lived there, but when I looked at a newspaper, it was like a wall of text. And I felt completely locked out. And that does something to you, because reading is how you access culture, thoughts, ideas, stories. And I know back in the day, I had actually made a decision not to study reading, not to master kanji. I felt it was beyond me. I didn't say it out loud, but it was there. I said to myself, I can't read Japanese. I'm not the kind of person who can do this. And I carried that for a long time, but looking back now, I don't think that was true. I don't think it was about ability. I think it was about how I learned. Because the truth is, I didn't really learn 2,000 kanji. I memorized them for an exam. Fast forward to this week, the guy I watched the video, he talked about this book called Remembering the Kanji, which was actually written while I was living in Japan in 1997. but I didn't know about it at all. But somehow 2026, it's found me, and it changed something. Not just how I approach kanji, but how I think about memory and remembering a language. So this is what I've been learning. Not really learning, but just reading about. So this is the Chinese character, or kanji for sun. Might not be written so well, but let's not worry about that. When you have, three suns written together, like this, the meaning is sparkling. And you can imagine that, things would sparkle if you had three suns in the sky. And my favourite one so far, if you put a sun next to the character for moon, this means brightness, and it's because it's imagining the world is ruled by two lights, the light of the sun during the day and the light of the moon at night, so it's always bright. And suddenly, they're not symbols anymore, they're ideas. And this is what surprised me. The book said, don't do learning drills. Don't waste your time. This is about locking these ideas into your memory, not forcing them. And this is where everything changes. I stopped trying to learn Japanese the way I used to. Back then I was trying to prove something. I was fresh out of university where I had to study Japanese really hard and pass tests and exams. I wanted credentials. I wanted to prove something, to say I was good at the language. Now I'm not trying to learn anything. I'm just trying to reconnect. So instead of studying, I'm letting Japanese exist in my life again. Hearing it, speaking it, letting it be messy. And then in those places, something shifts. The language starts attaching itself to real moments again. I stop thinking I'm trying to relearn this, and I start feeling this is still part of me. It comes back in fragments, but each one feels familiar. And then there's this, the highest point. It's not fluency. It's not perfection. It's this. It stops feeling like learning and starts feeling like remembering. For years, I was looking at kanji, trying to rote learn them. Now I'm starting to look at them and recognize them. Right now, I'm not trying to master Japanese again. I'm inviting it back into my life, one moment at a time, one podcast at a time, one memory at a time. And you are a part of this. You've been watching me, following along on my journey. I have something to ask. If you know a great Japanese podcast, please let me know, because in my quiet times and my commutes, I have been wanting to listen to Japanese, but the only podcasts I've been finding are aimed at beginners, and I'm not quite sure how to cut through that and find some really cool stories about Japanese people, Japanese culture, in Japanese language, and connect with the culture again. In exchange, I'll share one that I love in English. It's an Australian podcast. It's called Conversations. And my favourite episode, I'll leave linked down below, is about a doctor who works with spiders on a daily basis, but is fearful of them. And when she first started her career, she would be cowering in a corner around the spiders and trying not to cry. And it's her amazing career journey and the special things that she does in her job that have an impact all over the world. So she milks spiders for venom, certain spiders from Australia. And their venom is used in pharmaceuticals for epilepsy, for strokes, and painkillers. So it's such an amazing story. So long story short, in my experience, a language doesn't come back again when you chase it. It comes back again when you let it exist in your life. 最近は日本語を勉強しているという感覚ではなくて、少しずつ生活の中に戻ってきているような感じがしています。ポッドキャストを聞いたり、短い言葉を口にしたり、ただそれだけのことです。もし日本語を忘れてしまったと感じている人がいるなら、多分それはなくなったのではなくて、少し遠くに行っているだけなのかもしれません。そしてまた出会い直すことができると思います。